Hello, you're listening to the Wheel Talk podcast. My name is Abby Mickey. We are here for the 2024 Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift. This is our preview episode. I am joined by Lauren Rowney. Don't say where we are.
I was thinking of a French word, but g'day, everyone. Let's start off with that.
Tilda Price.
Bonjour. Aha.
Fluent.
Well, we're here to preview the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift. And where are we, Lauren? Set the scene.
Well, the audio in this is so great that maybe you can't hear in the background, maybe you can, the karcher that is going off at the moment, because there are mechanics cleaning bikes ahead of tomorrow's stage 1. And we are really excited to say that we are sitting in the FDJ Suez team bus, pretending to be riders for a day. I am currently Cecile Uttrup Ludwig.
Whoa.
I'm channeling her vibes. Tilda, who are you?
I have the pleasure of being Evita Musique today, slightly above my stature, but front of the bus, team leader. I don't think that's the role I'm taking on this week, but yeah, very exciting. You've got an even more special one, Abby.
Yeah, Olympic gold medalist Grace Brown in the seat.
Vibes.
Wow.
It's day 1 for us, and it's been such a good start to the morning already. We bumped into commentary legend from Australia, Matt Keenan, at the hotel, and now we've just gotten to one of the team hotels where S2X Pro Time are, FDJ Suez, a few other teams like Jaco Alula are here. Bumped into the riders and watched them roll out, and it's a beautiful day in Rotterdam.
Yep, the mechanics are hard at work prepping the bikes, and we got a sneak peek of Grace Brown's new post-Olympic winning TT bike that she's going to race in Stage 3's time trial, and it is.
For the Aussies that know this reference, it is a straight to the pool room kind of bike that is just going to hang on that living room wall, or pool room wall, as we call it. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's gorgeous, and it's pretty cool that we get to record the podcast in the FDJ Suez team bus. This is quite the experience for us. We got some coffees made.
I mean, yeah, I think we were just having a little chat before. Being riders now, I can almost say a decade ago, this was definitely not the experience when you got on your team bus. I mean, actually, there weren't really team buses back then. Only a few teams like Bols Dolman at the time had such a bus. So it's quite the experience to sort of take this in. And I think this is something that we've spoken about at all the past. Well, this is the 3rd edition only, but Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift is that you can just feel the level that women's cycling is at now for some teams.
Yeah, I mean, even the amount of staff that they have hovering around the team at the moment, the amount of mechanics, and they even have a chef van that like opens up on the side, and you can see what the chefs are doing in there and what they're cooking up, which is pretty rad. And all of that was just kind of unimaginable even 3 years ago for the women's peloton. So the level has really risen quite a lot, and it's very obvious when you wander around a team hotel.
Yeah, it's a real like symbol of the change, isn't it? Like the vehicles and the people around, and yeah, you couldn't imagine it when it used to be one minivan, one car, and now it's a whole fleet. It's just like being at a men's team hotel, really, which is kind of strange, but obviously really great to see.
Well, route. We're going to talk Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift 3rd edition route preview today. We've got a lot to look forward to in this race. And if you want to see a written preview of the route, you can check escapecollective.com. I've got a written piece up with all the profiles and stuff. And we're going to also do daily previews of each stage. So you've also got that available if you would like to see those. They're up the day before the stage every day. For now, we're going to run through the stages, starting with stage 1 in Rotterdam. It's going to be a fast one.
I mean, as expected, we are in the Netherlands. It's very, very flat. I don't think I've ever seen this on a profile before, the altitude going below 0. But
it is the Netherlands.
Yeah, that's the one place you're going to find it. It's hard to say much about this, isn't it? There's one climb, which does seem to be climbing from below 0 back to sea level, which is, not exactly a climb, but it means
it's a bridge.
We will have a polka dot jersey, so they will be going for that one.
Yeah, they need points somewhere for the climbers to fight for the first jersey of the stage. 123 kilometers from Rotterdam to La Haye. And for any pronunciation I butcher this week, Jose Bain is going to be introducing each of our daily episodes with the corrections.
I can try my best in Dutch. I should get it. It's Den Haag.
Den Haag. There you go. See?
Or The Hague in English.
And yeah, the stage is pretty flat. So we're expecting a sprint finish.
We are. And I guess something that we need to talk about is it is stage 1 of arguably the biggest tour of the year for the women. It's a sprinter stage, which means we're deep into the season now, but there can be a lot of nerves. So I'd say that will be the biggest probably takeaway point other than who wins tomorrow is that 2 things actually. Tomorrow there's going to be a heat wave. It's going to be very hot out on the roads. It's the Netherlands. I haven't checked the wind forecast, but last time I did look, it wasn't going to be super windy, which it can be quite a factor in the spring. We've spoken about this before. Wind is usually what makes the racing here super interesting. Roads are narrow. They will be taking on different types of roads here, so that can be a factor. Of course, it will come down to a sprint finish, but the big point here is for the GC riders to stay safe, not crash, not lose any time because of potential mishaps that can happen in a stage 1 sprint where there is so much on the line to take that first yellow jersey.
And the riders that we're looking at to win this first stage are mostly Dutch. I mean, you've got Lorena Wiebes, who obviously was a favorite going into the Olympic road race and walked away with a bit of disappointment there. So she will be really keen to take this yellow jersey. Remember, she took the first yellow jersey of 2022's Tour de France Femmes on the Champs-Élysées. So she's going to want to repeat that experience. Plus, we have Marianne Vos coming off of an amazing Olympic performance to get second. And she's a rider who can absolutely pull it out when it comes to the pressure that they will be feeling for this race. And there's obviously a bunch of other sprinters in the race that are going to want to perform well on the first stage. But for the Dutch to have the Tour de France Femmes on home roads and have their crowds around we've already been walking the streets of Rotterdam. Everyone has their stickers on almost every single business. Everyone's really, really excited to have the race here. So for the Dutch, it's going to be huge. And for the Dutch riders, it's going to be even more important to win that stage.
Yeah, and it will give so much extra motivation to someone like Marianne Vos, who we maybe wouldn't be putting forward as a favourite in any other like typical sprint stages when you have riders like Wiebes, Charlotte Kool, even though she's not been on her best this year, and Balsamo. But yeah, with a yellow jersey in your home country up for grabs, like you're going to pull out every single stop. And I wouldn't necessarily be surprised to see Mariana up there. Yeah, this must be the stage that she's looking at as like the number 1 target this year.
It's going to just be a question of which lead-out train can match SD Worx Pro Time, because they have brought a great team for this race, for both the GC and for the sprinters, for the sprint stages. So, we had spoken at the start of the year that we thought Little Trek was a team that could really match them in terms of firepower there at the end. Balsamo is back, obviously just raced the Olympics. We're still not quite sure on the road what her level is at, based on the horrific crash that she had a few months back now. But I'm really curious to see what happens there. Unfortunately, Elisa Longo-Borghini won't be racing this race, which is, we're going to get into that when we discuss potential GC contenders. But she would have been really important, I think, for Team Balsamo.
Yeah, she's become quite the lead out rider in the last couple of years, but Balsamo still has Ellen van Dijk, who's back on top and will be super keen to show what she can do after a disappointing Olympics. And she's super crucial in the lead up to these sprints. She can't be in the mix when it's like 1K to go, but in keeping Balsamo in position leading into the sprint, she'll be important. So I think it's going to be a real fight. And there's definitely, I think what Vos doesn't have is the lead out train to rival SD Worx, but she has the experience and she knows exactly where she needs to be in the right position to beat Wiebes. Stage 2, another sprint stage, but this is a weird day. So for the first time in a women's world tour event, we have a double day stage, 2 stages in one day. They wanted 8 stages. We only had 7 days to put on the race. So we've got 2 stages, a 70-kilometer pan flat stage in the morning and a 6.5 kilometer long time trial in the afternoon. The stage in the morning is, flat. Flat as flat can be. It's another Rotterdam. It's Rotterdam to Rotterdam, so they're going to do a big loop. One of the main differences to the second stage from the first stage is that the finish is a lot more technical. As you would imagine, finishing in Rotterdam, coming into the city, there's a lot of twists and turns. It's on city streets. There's potential tram lines in that situation. So there's going to be a lot going on in the last 5 kilometers when they come into the city that is pretty different from the first stage. So it's going to be a lot more important to have a really strong team that holds itself together, which again favors SC Works Pro Time.
It does seem like, thinking about the teams that teams are bringing, like it's such a hard balance between, you have these stages to start with, which you need to control, not only for your sprinter, but for your GC riders.
We got 2 SC Works riders walking by outside and they have a special jersey.
It's very Dutch.
Gosh. Super Dutch.
Super Dutch.
They're
it's
all
like,
the Dutch national champion.
Yeah, basically.
It's just
we'll just say they're channeling Zwift.
yeah,
channeling
they're
Zwift
just
vibes.
super orange. Yeah.
They love the orange. Orange is the color.
Sorry, I interrupted you. It was exciting. Here comes defending champion Demi Vollering. She's
Now we're just commentating a catwalk here.
yeah, super chill, meandering out of the hotel, looks focused.
The kit just looks like Olympic kit, no?
I'm waving at Demi. I don't think she's seen me.
Oh,
She smiled. She gave me a smile.
She
and
waved
a
back.
wave. Demi Vollering listens to the podcast, everyone.
Yeah, they're going to be hard to beat on stage 2. I feel like stage 1 is a good stage for Weebus, but stage 2 is a good stage for her whole team.
Yeah.
Yeah, unless another team can sort of, you said it was a technical finish, get the jump. I think that's potentially the only way that you could maybe beat them.
It's almost like creating chaos, isn't it? And I think that's sometimes where SD Works struggle a little bit, because they're so organized and so drilled, is that when you throw something crazy at them, and I would say it can be similar with Little Trek, but then they have a good rider, I would say, in Lucinda Brand in the team, who is from Dordrecht, I believe, which is where the stage starts. Yeah. So, if you can create a bit of like a strange atmosphere with attacking and stuff like that, but the thing is that all the teams that have sprint teams also have GC riders, so you have to balance creating a situation that might benefit your sprinters, but also you can't drop your own GC riders on stage 2. So
or create an environment where there would potentially be a bigger crash or gaps. Yeah. And then stage 3, 6.5 kilometer long time trial. It's going to be a real quick one in Rotterdam, flat time trial, but it's still the kind of effort where there could be small gaps that open up among the GC riders, and a great opportunity for Grace Brown to showcase her new bike and her Olympic gold medal and that form that she's riding right now, and for Ellen Van Dijk to have kind of a comeback situation. I can't imagine what better way to kind of turn your confidence around from having a disappointing Olympic time trial to winning a stage of the Tour de France Femmes. And then there's a bunch of other riders who, Rihanna Marcus didn't get to
race the Olympics, and she's a phenomenal time trialer. She'll be really excited about that stage. So it's a short stage, but it's a crucial stage in this race for a lot of riders, and it still could be a potentially shifting day in the GC in minimal ways, which I think once we get to the end of the race, it will maybe not matter as much. But what we've seen in the last couple of years is that any chance to wear the yellow jersey is a chance that riders will jump on. And if there's a rider who can take the yellow jersey on the third stage with a good time trial, they will absolutely want to do that.
I can see Weebers. I mean, we know she can time trial well, and this is like an effort of less than 10 minutes, which is perfect. And any trackie, to be honest. So any of the trackies that have just come from the Olympics, I think are going to do really well in this race. So I'd be looking towards the sprinters, and SD Works Pro Time can be a little bit greedy, and I think they want Weebus to probably hold the jersey for the first 4 days.
I think you mentioned this in your preview, Abby, about kind of how you approach a split day and like nutrition and balancing your efforts. And there are a lot of riders in this peloton that will have done that a lot more recently than others. Like races like the Baloise Ladies Tour always have a stage almost exactly like this, which is super flat and then a super short TT. And like Charlotte Kool, Lorena Wiebes, Lucinda Brandt have both done those races in the last couple of years and done really well. And won, I think, like, you know, you can win both stages if you're a sprinter on a day like that. So I think having that experience of doing that might also come into play as a benefit compared to riders who, like Demi Vollering, isn't wasting her time with races like Baloise Ladies Tour anymore. But actually, there are some benefits to having done that sort of thing, because it is a strange day to approach.
Well, yeah, for the GC riders, these first 3 stages is all about conservation of energy, staying safe, like you said, nutrition, taking care of themselves. And with the time trial, it's, managing your losses. So they're going to have to go full gas because they can't afford to lose. I mean, in such a short time trial, it's amazing how much time you can potentially lose as a GC rider. And we've seen this in shorter time trials actually this year.
Yeah, I mean, even you remember the Giro had a first stage time trial that I think was only 4.8 kilometers. Like it was basically a prologue. And we saw some pretty sizable gaps for some of the GC riders that really made a huge difference, but more importantly showed that the form wasn't quite there. So when it came to the mountains, it turned out they didn't have the form to compete there. And we saw hints of it in the time trial. So that's also something that we could potentially see, is some riders who just, you know, aren't at the level, and it could be kind of a sneak peek at what we will see coming up in the final 3 stages that are going to be a lot harder. But yeah, like you said before the race, Beats Music said that these first 3 stages are just about staying upright and staying and not losing any time. It's just a matter of survival, and there's a lot of GC riders that are going to be thinking that way.
Yeah, and I guess for a team, going back again to SD Worx Pro Time, who are trying to achieve 2 separate goals, sprint victories and the GC, well, stage wins in general, that becomes quite hard to manage on stages like this, because you've got to look after Demi, but then you also want to ensure that Wiebes is also looked after in the right position, and then you've got to commit energy to that finale. And, you know, the finale starts, particularly with these flat stages, can already start with 20K to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially on the Rotterdam stage, it's 70 kilometers long. And if they're not going to let nothing's going to slip off the front. Like, it's going to be a fast race because they're not going to want to take any chances, because it's such a weird day in general that there's a lot that can go wrong in a short period of time. Stage 4, one of the stages that I'm potentially the most excited for. It's a stage that includes a lot of classic climbs that we're already very familiar with, and the riders are very familiar with. The start is in Valkenburg, and they do 2 ascents of the Kouwberg. They do basically the AMSO Gold race, but kind of backwards. And then they ride to Belgium. So we go from the Netherlands into Belgium for the second stage. Ends in Liège, so that means that they also do a ton of the Liège climbs. Actually, the last chunk of the race is basically climb per climb exactly the same as Liège, Bastogne-Liège. The last 50 kilometers is basically Liège, Bastogne-Liège, with Col de la Redoute, Côte de Forge, Roche-Pacon, and then 13.3, same exact as Liège, Bastogne-Liège, 13.3 kilometers to the finish line in Liège. So a lot of riders are going to be familiar with this race. And while the finish is super similar to Liège-Bastogne-Liège, it's going to be a very different finish than we see in the one-day classic. Obviously, there's a lot more on the line in a multi-day race. And so we're not going to see the big gaps in the peloton that we usually see on the one day. But there's definitely potential for gaps, and there's potential for opportunistic riders who maybe aren't targeting the GC to take this stage. This is like potentially a great breakaway day, but also could absolutely come down to the GC riders in the end. So it's going to be such an exciting stage, and there's just so much that can happen on this stage, and there's so many opportunities for so many different riders throughout the entire day. And it'll be a huge deal for Belgium to have a finish of the Tour de France Femmes in Belgium. We've talked about the Lotte Kopecky effect and what her success has done to women's cycling in Belgium. So this is super exciting, and a bummer that she won't be on the start line, obviously, but it's a big deal. And as we speak, she's racing Omnium at the Olympics. So plenty of other Belgian riders to be excited about in the peloton, and it's just going to be, just really cool that they were able to include such iconic climbs in cycling in the Tour de France Femmes.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of discussion about having this Rotterdam start and, half the stages not in France, but like stages like this are what make the Tour interesting. And we see it in all the different Grand Tours, but especially the Tour with like Roubaix stages and stages that take in parts of classics. Like, it's going to be a really, really interesting day. I think the only, like, the thing that's a shame is having those Amstel climbs so early. Like, it won't be like Amstel. And I love those climbs so much, like the Bemmelenberg, the Kouwberg. But they won't be raced like that, which, we'll see a very different side of them. Like, it's a good place for the breakaway to go. And you can't complain too much because of what you have coming up at the end of the stage. But yeah.
I think that's going to be the big opportunity, like we've just mentioned about the first 3 stages, how it's probably going to be quite controlled. You're going to have the smaller teams trying to get some TV time and get away. But this is the stage where we'll see that really the early break hopefully get those riders and teams into the spotlight out the front, get the race started. But I do love it when they include a real classic style race into a Grand Tour. And this is the perfect combination of 2 iconic classic races. So I'm also very excited for this stage and to see who's actually going to pull it off at the end. I don't know. I'm getting vibes that someone like a Ruth Edwards could be a potential race.
Absolutely. She could absolutely do an amazing performance on this stage. I mean, they've done the same thing that they've done with the last 2 tours that has been so successful, and starting off kind of with flatter stages, starting off for the sprinters and really building into the more the hillier courses that favor other riders, and really giving a lot of riders opportunities to not only win a stage but also wear that yellow jersey. And they've done that again with this stage. And I think if Kopecky were in the race, we would be like, there's only one rider who can win this stage. I mean, they would be doing everything in their power to hold it together for her in order for her to win this stage. But it's definitely a stage that could feature a lot of different riders, and I think can definitely see the yellow jersey changing hands, which we want to see that. We want to see multiple riders wearing the yellow jersey. And last year was amazing having Kopecky in the yellow jersey for such a long time, but we want to see, new riders experiencing that iconic jersey and getting to showcase that for their team. So I think that this presents an opportunity for a lot of teams that maybe aren't the top teams in the sport to try to do something in that regard.
Isn't it so weird actually how few riders have worn yellow, like compared to like, the whole history of that jersey and everything. And it is only open to a very small amount of riders, but these stages are opening it up. Although on the other hand of that, like I will not be shocked if we saw like Demi Vollering on the attack on this stage, and like especially after a couple of kind of nervous days in Rotterdam where those GC riders are kind of holding back and not racing. Like riders like her love racing, and these are roads that earlier this year are like her exact battleground. So I really wouldn't be surprised if that happens. I kind of hope it doesn't, but yeah, someone like her and Kasia and stuff like that wouldn't be out of the question, I don't think.
I think that's actually a good point to start talking a little bit now about the GC contenders, because, for the first place, there's only a few in my mind that are really in contention for the overall win. But in general, to run a top 10 in GC here is prestigious. And so for me, the riders who are most at threat in these sort of stages are like your Sarah Gigantes, who could maybe get a little bit isolated. That said, she did have a really good Liège-Bastogne-Liège this year. Your Gaia Riolinis, they'll need a little bit more, protection from the team and attentiveness during these stages.
Yeah, and that's where the experience really comes in with teams like SD Works and Little Trek, for whom that looking after your leader is like second nature. But yeah, the Gigantes and the really pure climbers who will be looking at Alpe d'Huez as like a really good opportunity will be looking at these stages as like, like that's
just
kind
get
of,
through them. Yeah. Kim Kadzo, another one. We've got these brilliant young climbers, and I think they're the riders who will lose more time in these first few stages, which will make things a bit interesting when we get later into the race.
Yeah, although I think, you know, that's the interesting thing about the Tour, though, is that, like, and having such a hard finish, it goes both ways in the fact that we're kind of expecting that there will be huge gaps on that day, but that can benefit riders who make up a lot of time on the Col de Glandon, Grand Bornand, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to the end of this race, there are only a certain number of riders who are going to be able to factor into the GC. But at this early stage, we don't know how those final 2 days are going to go. So there's going to be much more riders who feel that they can play for the GC who are going to be feeling good this early in the race. Like Kasia Niewiadoma, we don't know how she's going to go on those final climbs. This is absolutely her opportunity to take a yellow jersey. There are riders like Abita Music who will be targeting the final 2 stages and the final 2 stages alone. And she's not going to want to make a play for the jersey this early in this stage. But someone like Kasia absolutely would. Cecily Uttrup-Ludwig, they're going in with co-leaders, FDJ Suez. And when it comes to those final 2 stages, they absolutely favor Music over Uttrup-Ludwig. So Zile is going to want to go for a stage like this and try to pull on the yellow jersey earlier in the race. So I think we can kind of split the GC in half with the climbers that are going to feature in the final 2 stages and the other GC riders who are very good climbers but are going to struggle in those 2 stages and are going to want to, even if they can't make up the time that they need to factor in the GC overall at the end of the race, they can still make a play at the GC early in the race, and it starts on stage 4.
Taking time early on, we saw with Lotte Kopecky, like, you can take it all the way to the end. Like, if you can take 30 seconds and defend that can make a big difference in your standings. So getting a head start on those stages can make a huge difference, and I think that's what we saw last year.
Stage 5 is another slightly hilly day, but definitely could be one for the sprinters, if not for the bonus climb pretty close to the finish that includes seconds on the line. About 15K to go, there's a category 4 climb, and then immediately after that, there's a bonus climb that's 2 kilometers after the official categorized summit. So back to back, there's these 2 climbs, and that bonus climb means that there's seconds on the line. And at this stage in the race, you know, seconds could make a difference in the yellow jersey. We don't know how it will be at that point. So it could make for a really exciting finale. This would be something that I would say had Elisa Longoborghini's name all over it if she was in the race. But then it's basically a downhill run to the line, and we're in France. We're finally in France. Stage 5, I think one of the most notable things is it's when the stage finally crosses from Belgium into France. But it's an interesting stage. It's like, could be a reduced bunch sprint, could be a breakaway stage, could be the GC favorites kind of having a go at the end of the race. It's really a toss-up this stage.
Yeah, I really like having those stages, actually, which you just can't predict. I mean, it's hard for us sitting here doing a preview podcast, but when they actually play out, they're some of the most exciting ones to watch because you just don't know what's going to happen. But yeah, those bonus seconds, even though I assume, is it 3-2-1 bonus seconds? What it usually is for the bonus. But you could see that being like a launch pad that riders go for it and then carry on. We see that a lot with intermediates. And yeah, if it was a good group, you can go all the way to the finish. And again, things could be shaken up once again on this race.
And it's so close to the finish, that bonus line, that if anyone goes over the top of it with a gap, it's going to be really hard to pull them back because it goes straight into a descent. And the flat part between the descent and the finish is very, very short. So the race is going to be spread apart. Teams are going to be fractured all over the place. There's going to be very few teams that are able to keep riders together at that point in the race to be able to chase. So if anyone does go over the top of that climb, like this could be a great stage for Ruth Edwards as well.
Or Lucinda Brund.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really a toss-up this stage. It reminds me a lot of, like, we don't have much transitional stages in the Tour de France because there's so few stages compared to the men's. But it is kind of one of those transitional stages in that there's not much that you can predict.
I can see like the long break going and then the potential winners catching the long break just over the top And then maybe a strong rider who's been in that break all day then goes potentially with a couple of riders.
I mean, actually, who could do really well on this stage is Kristen Faulkner. Yes. Really, really good at that late race move. We've seen it time and time again. And she's coming into this race with more confidence than a human could possibly handle at this point with 2 gold medals around her neck and obviously has the form. So we know that EF Oatley Cannondale is going to be targeting stages of this race. And this is a stage that absolutely has their name written all over it. If it's not Faulkner, maybe it's Allison Jackson, it's a stage that suits riders like that who are willing to put it all on the line for the stage win. And yeah, damn the GC.
I think Faulkner as well, we pencil her in for maybe stage 4.
No, true. Very true.
Well, stage 3 as well. Like, she's
just come
so
from the
many.
track.
Yeah, it just depends how the transition goes from racing so much. But tiredness, but mixed with as you say, it's probably the biggest confidence boost you've ever had.
Yeah. Stage 6 is another interesting one, slightly hilly in the beginning and ends with some pretty big climbs. There's a category 2 climb, it's 159 kilometers, and there's a category 2 climb, 127 kilometers into the race, and that's the biggest climb of the day. But that one is also followed by a little bonus climb for bonus seconds, and then immediately after that, there's a stage 3, 1.8 kilometers long, and then it descends to the finish. So this is kind of the first GC, like almost real GC stage of the race because of that category 2 climb so close to the finish. And the fact that the category 2, the bonus climb, and the category 3 climb are so close together kind of makes it one big climb with like slight pauses in between, which almost hurts the legs more than if you were to just consistently climb for a long period of time. So it's a stage where I think we'll see the GC riders really, really keen on being up there, but it might not necessarily be a GC rider that wins the stage. It might be somebody who can maybe slip away on the descent, or maybe like an Anna Henderson who's really, really strong on the climbs, but isn't going to feature on the final 2 stages. But I think this is the first day we're going to start seeing major gaps in the GC, and we're going to start seeing which GC riders came with real climbing form.
Yeah, definitely a stage where the GC contenders will be looking at one another and not wanting to get out of sight. But this is actually a stage where someone who's been, flying under the radar a little bit, but can still feature in the GC, does get some time.
Yeah, I could also see this being a day where they let a breakaway go long, like a Yara Castelline type stage last year. But so whether they're going for the win or not, the GC group, I mean, they'll still be battling each other, but there may be someone up the road. And again, it's one of those ones where, like, if you're a rider who managed to stay within a minute and a half, 2 minutes for the rest of the race, and suddenly you win by a minute from the breakaway on this stage, like, you see yourself shoot into the top 10 before the weekend, like, it can change the image of things quite a lot.
It kind of kicks off also the final 3 stages that are really, like I said, the race is building over time. And on the 7th stage, not only is it the longest climb of the whole race, 166.4 kilometers. Normally in these final 2 stages where they've traditionally put the big climbs, they have shorter stages, but they didn't do that this year. They had the longest stage of the race, also with the first category 1 climb of the race. So the 7th stage is definitely where, this is where the GC riders will be looking the entire race. They'll be looking ahead to the stage on Saturday. The category 1 climb is pretty early on in the stage, 57.8 kilometers in. So it's too early for anyone to make a big move. It's like if Annemiek was still in the race, we wouldn't say that. But for the current peloton, it's too early in the race for someone to make a big move that early in the stage. After that, it's relatively calm with a category 4 and a category 3, but that builds into 2 cat 2s that are back to back. There's just one tiny descent after the first cat 2, and then it goes into Le Grand Bornand, 7 kilometers long, 5.1%, and it finishes on that climb. So it's the first real mountaintop finish of the race. And like with the stage before, because those cat 2s are so close together, it might as well be a cat 1 And it'll be a lot of climbing to handle. And that little descent in the middle, Cat2's, offers a slight reprieve, but it's not going to make those 2 climbs any easier. The first like real GC tests of the race. This is going to be what Demi Vollering is looking forward to. The stage that she's been looking forward to all week, where she can finally, hopefully, pull on the yellow jersey on the 7th stage. Exactly what she did last year.
Yeah, I mean, in any other year or race, like, you could see this being the Queen stage and the final stage. You know, it's an enormous day, and it's the same day that it's the same climb that they did for La Course a few years ago, and like when they had their first flagship mountainous La Course. It wasn't a finish atop the climb, like they had descended, but yeah, like this is a climb that makes good racing and is a really, really hard one. But it also, like, you know, it's stage 7, but do you think riders will be thinking about the next day? Like, you can't gas yourself here ahead of Alpe d'Huez.
Yeah, I think that's a good question there, is like, this is where I see like a Neve Bradbury really going for it, like we've seen her do in the Giro actually, and not think, just get through today and see what happens, because sometimes that's actually where the winning move can be made. You can't, I guess as a GC rider, yes, you have to manage fatigue and such things, but if your contenders, like the major contenders, are going, you have to go. I can also see Sarah Gigante doing really good in this stage. And again, going back to that, maybe she's lost a little bit of time before going into this stage. And everyone knows how well she can climb. So I feel this could be a good day for her. And that said, with teams like that, wouldn't be surprised if like a team like AG Insurance put Anya Lowe in an early move and try to get her deeper into the race to support Sarah later. So we're going to be seeing moves like that, I think, trying to get teammates deeper into the race so there is some support there. But then, of course, it's always going to be in the back of your mind that stage 8 is coming up, and that is where, you know, the big grand finale is going to happen. But don't underestimate stage 7.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like stage 8 is the Queen stage, and that's the stage that, you know, ends the race in the most iconic way that they could possibly end a race. But this stage has almost 3,000 meters of elevation gain over, and it's long. 166 kilometers is a long stage. So I think what might happen on this stage is that people might just be scared. It might be a stage where people are really nervous and we don't see anything go until that first category 2 climb of the race, because there's a lot that they have to cover on this stage with stage 8 in mind. So while it looks like it could be a really exciting day, it might not be. It might be kind of similar to the stage in the Giro where we did 2 laps of the climb there, and people were really nervous and took the whole first ascent of that climb really, really easy. And we really didn't see much happen until Neve Bradbury started to attack on the final climb in the final like 10K. And I think we might see something similar here, where it's just riders just trying to survive the day, but everyone is out there trying to survive, and no one wants to put too much pressure on themselves, their teams, or the whole race before the 8th stage and before those 2 climbs at the end. Stage 8, the big one. We got Alpe d'Huez in the Women's Tour de France. How cool is that? 150 kilometers long. First, they have a Cat 2 early in the stage, but everything really kicks off 77.7 kilometers into the stage, where they will start their approach for the first climb, the Col de Glendon. The real racing starts 77 kilometers into the stage, where teams will start to line up before they get to the base of Col de Glendon. They do that climb and descend and have a bit of flats before they go into Alpe d'Huez. And before the race, Ivica Music said that Col de Glendon is potentially harder than Alpe d'Huez. So this is a stage that is going to be absolutely brutal. I mean, still 150 kilometers is a pretty long race. And then when you throw in 2 climbs, one of them is almost 20 kilometers long, and and Alpe d'Huez is almost 14 kilometers long. That's a hell of a lot of climbing. So this is going to be a really, really hard stage, and kind of a stage worthy of the race. I feel like since the race started in the Netherlands and we kind of only have half of the race in France, it was only right to have this kind of iconic fixture in cycling kind of end the Tour de France Femmes.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like the way that it's finishing, these last days are really hard. 6, 7, 8 are going to be really hard days on the bike. And like my legs are aching just looking actually at the profile of this. No, really, like, I mean, it's going to be a massive day. And I think every year, this is the 3rd edition of this race, the expectation is growing and growing of what this race is becoming. And I think this is just a perfect way to sort of round it out. I mean, all eyes are on Demi, right? We haven't actually talked in depth about the contenders because I think she is still the one to beat. But I'm so curious about how everyone's legs are going to be feeling at this point and all the different types of preparation different riders have had. Like, you know, a rider like Ibiza Music has been quite quiet the past 2 months, I would say. So, you know, where is her format? What are we going to see her do in such a big day like this one? And then riders like we've already mentioned, riders like Gigante, Neve Bradbury, we've seen she's in fantastic form. What sort of legs will she have after racing 7 days?
Yeah, that's the thing is like we're going in with all eyes on Demi, but there are so many riders who didn't do the Tour de France or didn't do the Olympic and only had the Tour de France Femmes to prep for, like Rihanna Marcus, who finished second at the Vuelta earlier in the year. We have Ibiza Music, who is racing basically on home roads for the final 3 stages of this race. She's going to be, you know, she's in a really interesting position where allegedly, you know, they've got a really big name coming to the team next year. And this might be kind of her last opportunity to go into the Tour as not the sole leader, because they've said Sile is the co-leader, but when it comes to these 2 stages, she is their girl, you know, like she's the one they're going to be backing. So she's in a really interesting position there. And then you have riders that did the Olympics and maybe didn't have a great experience there, like Hashini Wadoma, who also is targeting this race. And this has been kind of one of her sole goals for the entire year. And one of the only, her and Ivica are the only 2 riders that have been able to beat Demi Vollering on a climb in 2024. Kasia Flesh Wallone earlier in the season, which is a much different effort, but is, you know, still climbing, and Ivica at the Vuelta. So while Demi is kind of the rider to watch, there are still a ton of riders that I think will be able to rival her, or at least be able to push her over her limit. And we're going to see that in the final 2 stages, but absolutely on this final stage.
Yeah, and when you're a pure climber, like someone like Ibiza Music is, like if you're flying and on a good day, like Demi will have to be a lot more, she's going to have to spend a lot more energy, or she just perhaps will spend a lot more energy because of the type of rider that she is, and she likes attacking and being involved in things. But so she has a slightly off moment in this stage at all. Like a small gap can immediately become a really big gap, and yeah, like you could take the yellow jersey on this stage, like someone like Music, if you have got through the rest of the week. Okay, like we might sound silly saying this when like Vollering obviously wins, but I don't think it's crazy to think that someone like Music could surprise. I mean, would it even be a surprise though? Like she is an amazing climber, and this is a day for the most purest climbers. Like,
and you know, someone we haven't spoken about is Riolini, and I think it's because going into this year, she's had a good year, but we're still waiting for that big wow performance on a climb for her. And it looks like this year she has been working a lot for Elisa. Unfortunately, Elisa is not competing. So I'm curious to see how Riolini goes, because in my mind, she is quintessential climber, like a Gigante, for example. I would love to see Sarah Gigante just fly up these mountains. That's what I'm looking for. And you're 100% correct, Tilda. Like in such a big day like this day, these climbs are so long. If you crack, you can see minutes just go out.
Yeah, I mean, I think for Little Trek, it's a really, really tough one, right? Because they were going in with the Giro winner, and Elisa is now out of the race. So what do they do? And I think someone who maybe we won't be surprised by, but could have an incredible performance is Shirin Van Anrooy, who had an amazing spring and won L'Avenir last year with some incredible performances, and has spent the last 3 weeks training at altitude, getting ready for this race. And she's one that it would be she's a long shot to win the yellow jersey, but absolutely not to finish on the podium. And I think for the young rider classification, it's basically hers to lose going into this race. But I think it's just how high up on the GC can she finish. But it's also a bit of a predicament that Little Trek maybe have gotten themselves into, because at the beginning you would have said, obviously, Eliza is the leader in this race. But now with Eliza out, you've got Gaia, who's an incredible climber in the final two stages. Sue, you've got Shirin, who, could do incredible things. And so they've got kind of like what works well for some teams and really doesn't for others, where you've got two riders who are kind of co-leaders, but neither of them is on the same level with the rider that is probably going to win this race. And how do they take the two riders that they have that could do super well and make that an advantage for them rather than a disadvantage of not having Elisa Longorini?
Yeah, and I think with Riolini, she was meant to have a bit of an opportunity at the Vuelta, and obviously that did not go so well. So it's like, how has she reimagined her season? And it is hard because I think teams do sit down in the beginning of the year and say, look, you can target this race, you can target that race, you can target another. And if you crash out of one or you get injured before another, like, you want another chance to be a leader, but that might be impinging on someone else's chance. So,
well, we got a lot to look forward to, and we're really excited to bring everybody daily episodes of the podcast starting tomorrow. Stage 1 in Rotterdam will be back. Thanks everyone so much for listening. Hope you enjoy the podcast and also the race. It's gonna be a good one.
Au revoir.